Jacobo Grinberg's Neuronal Lattice Theory. What if everything you perceive as reality is actually just one possibility among infinite potential realities? What if your consciousness is not simply observing the world, but actively creating it moment by moment? This isn't science fiction. It's the groundbreaking neuronal lattice theory proposed by one of neuroscience's most brilliant and enigmatic minds, Dr. Jacobo Grinberg-Zylberbaum. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most fascinating yet underappreciated scientific theories about consciousness and reality. A theory that bridges quantum physics, neuroscience, and ancient wisdom traditions. By the end of this video, you'll understand how your brain might be functioning as an interface that literally decodes reality from a field of infinite possibilities, and more importantly, how this understanding could transform your everyday experience. Stay with me, because I'll be sharing practical techniques based on Grinberg's research that could help you access expanded states of consciousness and potentially influence your reality in ways you never thought possible. This isn't just theoretical. It's about applying cutting-edge neuroscience to enhance your life in tangible ways. I'll create a script about Jacobo Grinberg's neuronal lattice theory. Let me start with the hook section. Hook. Introduction. What if everything you perceive as reality is actually just one possibility among infinite potential realities? What if your consciousness is not simply observing the world, but actively creating it moment by moment? This isn't science fiction. It's the groundbreaking neuronal lattice theory proposed by one of neuroscience's most brilliant and enigmatic minds, Dr. Jacobo Grinberg-Zylberbaum. Today we're diving deep into one of the most fascinating yet underappreciated scientific theories about consciousness and reality, a theory that bridges quantum physics, neuroscience, and ancient wisdom traditions. By the end of this video, you'll understand how your brain might be functioning as an interface that literally decodes reality from a field of infinite possibilities, and more importantly, how this understanding could transform your everyday experience. Stay with me, because I'll be sharing practical techniques based on Grinberg's research that could help you access expanded states of consciousness and potentially influence your reality in ways you never thought possible. This isn't just theoretical. It's about applying cutting-edge neuroscience to enhance your life in tangible ways. Main content: the mysterious scientist behind the theory. Before we explore the neuronal lattice theory itself, we need to understand the remarkable scientist who developed it. Dr. Jacobo Grinberg-Zylberbaum wasn't your typical neuroscientist. Born in Mexico City in 1946, he combined rigorous scientific methodology with a profound interest in consciousness studies that was decades ahead of his time. Grinberg earned his doctorate in psychophysiology from New York University and later became a distinguished researcher at Mexico's National Autonomous University, UNAM. What set him apart was his willingness to investigate phenomena that mainstream science often dismissed, like telepathy, shamanic experiences, and altered states of consciousness, using sophisticated neurological equipment and controlled laboratory conditions. Perhaps most fascinating is that Grinberg didn't just study these phenomena from a distance. He immersed himself in experiences with Mexican shamans, particularly with a renowned healer named Pachita. These encounters profoundly influenced his scientific thinking, leading him to question fundamental assumptions about consciousness and reality. Adding an element of mystery to his legacy, Grinberg disappeared without a trace in 1994, at the height of his career. His unexplained vanishing has led to numerous theories, but no definitive answers. What remains is his revolutionary body of work, over 50 scientific publications and several books, that continues to challenge our understanding of consciousness and its relationship to physical reality. Understanding the neuronal lattice theory. At the core of Grinberg's theory is a radical proposition. What we experience as objective reality is actually created through the interaction between our consciousness and what he called the neuronal lattice, or synergic lattice, a unified field of pure information and potential. The word lattice here refers to an interconnected matrix structure similar to a complex, multidimensional net. According to Grinberg, this lattice isn't physical in the conventional sense, but exists as a pre-physical field containing all potential realities simultaneously. Think of it as the quantum field of possibility from which our experienced reality emerges. Our brain, in Grinberg's model, doesn't create consciousness. Rather, it acts as a sophisticated transducer or interface. It receives, processes, and interprets information from the lattice, collapsing infinite possibilities into the specific reality we experience. This is strikingly similar to the quantum physics concept of wave function collapse. where observation transforms probability waves into definite particles or states. What makes this theory particularly revolutionary is its implication that all consciousness, not just human, but potentially all sentient beings, interacts with this same underlying field. This creates what Grinberg called a synergy, or synchronous energy, the collective impact of all conscious interaction with the lattice. In simple terms, Grinberg suggested that your brain doesn't passively receive information about a predetermined external reality. Instead, it actively participates in creating the reality you experience by selecting and organizing information from the universal lattice based on your attention, beliefs, and perceptual patterns. The science behind the theory. While Grinberg's ideas might sound esoteric, he supported them with serious scientific research. His laboratory studies focused particularly on measuring brain activity during various states of consciousness and investigating the neurophysiological basis of what he called transferred potential. In one famous series of experiments, Grinberg placed pairs of participants in separate Faraday cages, electromagnetically shielded rooms that block external signals. When one person was stimulated with a flashing light, their brain showed the expected evoked potentials, specific patterns of electrical activity. Remarkably, in some cases, the brain of the other person, who received no direct stimulation, showed similar patterns of activity, suggesting a non-local connection between their neural processes. Grinberg conducted EEG studies with Mexican shamans that revealed unusual patterns of coherence across brain regions during healing and altered states. This led him to propose that these practitioners were accessing the neuronal lattice more directly, bypassing the filtering mechanisms that normally limit our perception to conventional reality. His research on what he called the transferred potential phenomenon, where brain activity in one person appears to influence another without physical interaction, was particularly significant. This work anticipated later studies on brain synchronization between individuals and resonates with quantum entanglement principles, where particles once connected remain correlated regardless of distance. While some of Grinberg's methods and conclusions remain controversial in mainstream neuroscience, his work has gained renewed interest with advances in quantum biology, consciousness studies, and theories of non-local consciousness. Modern research on neural correlates of consciousness and quantum effects in biological systems is providing new frameworks for understanding phenomena that Grinberg was exploring decades ago. How the neuronal lattice shapes our reality. According to Grinberg's theory, what we call reality emerges through a three-stage process. First, there exists what he called the pre-space, the pure, unmanifested potential of the neuronal lattice containing all possibilities. Second is the process of interaction between consciousness and this field. Third is the resulting experienced reality, what we perceive as the physical world. This model has profound implications for understanding perception. In conventional neuroscience, perception is often described as a passive reception of external stimuli. Grinberg instead proposed an active model where perception involves a dynamic dialogue between consciousness and the information field of the lattice. Your attention acts as a focusing mechanism in this process. What you focus on literally shapes which aspects of the lattice's infinite possibilities become manifest in your experience. This explains why two people can witness the same event yet have entirely different experiences of it. They're actually interacting with different aspects of the lattice based on their attentional focus, beliefs, and previous conditioning. Memory works similarly in this model. Rather than retrieving information stored in neural networks, Grinberg suggested that remembering involves reaccessing specific patterns in the lattice that were previously experienced. This explains certain anomalous memory phenomena that are difficult to account for in conventional models. Perhaps most importantly, this theory suggests that our habitual ways of perceiving create a kind of reality tunnel, a consistent pattern of interaction with the lattice that produces a relatively stable experience of reality. These patterns become reinforced over time, making it challenging but not impossible to access radically different ways of experiencing reality. Altered states of consciousness as different lattice interactions. Grinberg was particularly interested in altered states of consciousness, from meditation and shamanic trances to psychedelic experiences and lucid dreams. In his framework, these states represent different modes of interaction with the neuronal lattice. In ordinary consciousness, our perception is highly filtered. Our brain follows established patterns of lattice interaction, creating our conventional sense of reality. This filtering is actually necessary for everyday functioning. It creates the consistent, predictable world we navigate. However, it also limits us to a narrow band of the lattice's infinite possibilities. During altered states, these filters are temporarily modified or bypassed. Meditation, for example, may quiet the habitual patterns of lattice interaction, allowing awareness to access broader aspects of the field. This explains why long-term meditators often report experiences of unity, timelessness, or non-duality. They're experiencing less filtered access to the underlying lattice. Shamanic practices, which Grinberg studied extensively, use various techniques, rhythmic drumming, dance, plant medicines, to rapidly shift the mode of lattice interaction. This enables practitioners to access information or healing potentials not available in ordinary consciousness. Rather than dismissing shamanic knowledge as superstition, Grinberg recognized it as a sophisticated technology for navigating the neuronal lattice. Even dreams can be understood through this model. During sleep, especially REM sleep, our brain interacts with the lattice with different filtering parameters than during waking consciousness. This allows for novel recombinations of information and access to creative solutions that might be blocked during normal waking consciousness. Grinberg's model suggests these altered states aren't hallucinations or mere subjective experiences. They represent equally valid modes of interaction with the underlying field of reality, each with its own advantages and limitations compared to ordinary consciousness, collective consciousness, and shared reality. One of the most intriguing aspects of Grinberg's theory concerns how individual consciousnesses interact to create collective or shared realities. Since all minds interact with the same underlying neuronal lattice, our individual reality-creating processes aren't isolated. They influence and are influenced by others. Grinberg proposed that when multiple people focus their attention in similar ways, they create a stronger, more stable pattern in the lattice. This explains why social consensus has such powerful effects on perception, and why cultural belief systems can shape not just interpretations of reality, but the experienced reality itself. This aspect of the theory helps explain social phenomena like mass movements, cultural transitions, and even the placebo effect. When enough people share a belief or expectation, it creates a dominant pattern in the lattice that becomes more accessible to everyone within that social field, regardless of their individual beliefs. Grinberg conducted experiments on this transferred potential between individuals, showing that when people established deep rapport or connection, their brains began to show synchronized patterns of activity, even when physically separated. This provided empirical support for his concept of a shared neuronal field. In some ways, this part of Grinberg's theory anticipated later concepts like morphic resonance, proposed by Rupert Sheldrake, and collective consciousness models in systems theory. It suggests that consciousness itself may be fundamentally non-local and interconnected, with individual minds representing localized aspects of a unified field rather than isolated phenomena. Beyond its theoretical significance, Grinberg's work offers practical applications for personal development and consciousness expansion. Understanding how your consciousness interacts with the neuronal lattice provides a scientific framework for practices that can enhance your cognitive abilities and potentially transform your experienced reality. Attention training becomes particularly important in this framework. Since your attention determines which aspects of the lattice become manifest in your experience, developing greater attentional control allows you to more consciously shape your reality. Practices like mindfulness meditation essentially train your ability to direct and sustain attention, potentially giving you greater agency in your lattice interactions. Belief examination is another crucial application. According to Grinberg's model, your beliefs act as templates that organize your interaction with the lattice. By identifying and modifying limiting beliefs, you can literally change how your consciousness interfaces with the field of potential, opening access to possibilities that were previously filtered out of your experience. Perceptual flexibility can be deliberately cultivated. Grinberg suggested techniques for temporarily suspending habitual perceptual patterns, allowing fresh interactions with the lattice. Simple practices like viewing familiar environments from new physical perspectives or intentionally attending to previously ignored sensory information can begin to loosen rigid reality tunnels. Coherence practices that synchronize brain function across regions create what Grinberg called synergic states, modes of consciousness that access the lattice more holistically. Modern techniques like neurofeedback, binaural beats, and certain forms of breathwork aim to create similar states of whole brain coherence. Perhaps most radically, Grinberg's research suggests that telepathic communication might be explained as direct interaction between two or more consciousness fields via the shared neuronal lattice. His transferred potential experiments indicate that developing deeper states of rapport and resonance with others might enhance this natural human capacity that is typically dormant in modern societies. The convergence with ancient wisdom traditions. What makes Grinberg's work particularly remarkable is how his scientifically derived theory parallels concepts found in ancient wisdom traditions. Without forcing these connections, Grinberg noted striking similarities between his neuronal lattice model and various spiritual cosmologies. In Buddhist philosophy, particularly the Yogacara school, reality is described as arising from a storehouse consciousness, alaya vijnana, containing all potentialities. Our individual consciousness, manas, interacts with this field, creating our subjective experience. This bears remarkable resemblance to Grinberg's model of consciousness interacting with the pre-space lattice. The Hindu concept of Maya, often misunderstood as meaning reality is an illusion, actually refers to the power that converts the unmanifest absolute, Brahman, into the manifest world we experience. This parallels Grinberg's description of how consciousness transforms lattice potentiality into experienced reality. Quantum physicist David Bohm's concepts of implicate and explicate orders, where the manifest universe emerges from a deeper, hidden reality, also resonate with Grinberg's framework. Bohm, who was aware of Grinberg's work, noted these parallels himself in some of his later writings. Indigenous knowledge systems often describe reality as being created through the interaction between consciousness and an underlying field of spirit or energy. Grinberg's extensive work with Mexican shamans led him to recognize that their traditional practices were sophisticated technologies for navigating what he came to call the neuronal lattice. Grinberg didn't view these parallels as mere coincidence. Instead, he suggested that ancient wisdom traditions had discovered through direct experience what modern neuroscience was beginning to approach through empirical research: the participatory nature of consciousness in creating reality. Scientific criticisms and contemporary relevance. Despite its fascinating implications, Grinberg's theory has faced significant criticism from mainstream neuroscience. Some critics argue that his concepts are too speculative, extending beyond what can be empirically verified. Others suggest his experimental protocols weren't rigorous enough to support his more extraordinary claims about transferred potential. The lack of a complete mathematical model for the neuronal lattice has been another criticism. While Grinberg began developing mathematical descriptions of the lattice's properties, this work remained incomplete at the time of his disappearance. Without such formalization, some aspects of the theory remain difficult to test using conventional scientific methods. However, contemporary developments in several scientific fields are creating new contexts for appreciating Grinberg's work. The growing field of quantum biology is discovering quantum effects operating in biological systems, including possibly in neural microtubules. This lends credibility to Grinberg's proposal that the brain might interact with quantum-level information fields. Research on non-local consciousness at institutions like the Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Laboratory, PEER, and the Institute of Noetic Sciences has produced evidence suggesting consciousness may indeed have effects beyond conventional spatial boundaries, a key aspect of Grinberg's theory. Advances in the neuroscience of consciousness, particularly in understanding neural synchrony and coherence, provide potential mechanisms for some aspects of Grinberg's model. Modern tools like functional MRI and quantitative EEG offer ways to test and refine his hypotheses about brain states and reality perception. As mainstream science continues to grapple with the hard problem of consciousness, how subjective experience arises from physical processes, Grinberg's integrative approach offers a framework that doesn't reduce consciousness to neural activity, but rather places it in a broader context of information fields and potential. Practical takeaways. Now that we've explored the neuronal lattice theory in depth, let's examine 5 practical applications you can implement in your daily life to work more consciously with your reality-creating process. First, practice deliberate attention direction. For 10 minutes each day, choose an object, concept, or desired experience, and maintain focused attention on it. Notice how sustained attention begins to reveal aspects previously invisible to you. This trains your ability to direct your consciousness more deliberately within the lattice of possibilities. As you develop this skill, gradually extend these periods of focused attention into your everyday activities. Second, experiment with perceptual flexibility exercises. Choose a familiar environment and intentionally perceive it through different filters. For instance, in your home, spend 5 minutes focusing exclusively on colors, then switch to noticing only textures, then only spaces between objects. This practice loosens habitual perceptual patterns and demonstrates how reality shifts based on what you attend to. Third, engage in belief identification and revision. Write down 5 core beliefs you hold about an area of life where you desire change. For each belief, ask, is this absolutely true? Where did this belief originate? What would be possible if I didn't hold this belief? Then craft alternative beliefs that better serve your development and consciously practice them daily through affirmation, visualization, and aligned action. Fourth, cultivate neural coherence through synchronized breathing. For 3 minutes, 3 times daily, practice slow breathing, 6 seconds in, 6 seconds out, while imagining your brain hemispheres synchronizing. Research shows this pattern enhances coherence across brain regions, potentially creating what Grinberg called synergic states, where consciousness can interact more directly with the lattice. Finally, experiment with shared consciousness experiences. With a willing partner, practice establishing deep rapport through eye contact and synchronized breathing for 5 minutes. Then, while maintaining a sense of connection, have one person visualize sending a simple image or feeling to the other. The receiver should remain receptive, noting whatever impressions arise without analyzing. This exercise explores the transferred potential phenomenon that Grinberg documented in his research. The neuronal lattice theory offers us a profound reimagining of consciousness and reality, one that places your awareness not as a passive observer, but as an active participant in creating the world you experience. While aspects of Grinberg's work remain controversial, the core insight, that reality emerges through the dynamic interaction between consciousness and an underlying field of potential, provides a powerful framework for understanding your own experience. Perhaps the most valuable implication of this theory is that your reality isn't fixed or predetermined. Your consciousness is continually engaging with the infinite possibilities contained within the neuronal lattice, selecting and organizing them based on your attention, beliefs, and perceptual patterns. This means you have far more agency in creating your experience than conventional models suggest. By developing greater awareness of how your consciousness interacts with the lattice, through practices like attention training, perceptual flexibility, and belief revision, you can begin to access possibilities that may have been filtered out of your previous experience. This doesn't mean reality becomes whatever you wish it to be, but rather that you can expand the range of possibilities available to your awareness. What aspect of your reality would you like to explore more consciously? What possibilities might be awaiting your attention in the vast field of the neuronal lattice? Begin implementing the practical techniques we've discussed, and you might be surprised at how your experienced reality begins to transform. If you found value in understanding Grinberg's revolutionary model of consciousness, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more explorations of cutting-edge consciousness research and its practical applications. Comment below with your experiences implementing these techniques. I'd love to hear how the neuronal lattice concept resonates with your understanding of reality. Until next time, remember that your consciousness isn't just observing reality, it's actively participating in creating it. The information presented on this channel is for informational and educational purposes only, and does not replace professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always consult a doctor or a qualified healthcare professional for any concerns about your health. If you are experiencing health issues, seek medical assistance immediately. Never ignore symptoms or delay seeking medical care based on information found online. Taking care of your health is essential. Schedule regular checkups with your doctor and follow medical advice tailored to your condition.